from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network. I am Reverend Charles Harrison, and on this episode, I will be talking with Andrew Harrison, who is the Republican candidate for the Marion County Clerk's office in this November general election. Welcome, this is Reverend Charles Harrison, and you are joining me today on Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison. And thank you so much for joining me today. And I have a special guest with me today. Now, he is not kin to me, and you may think he might be kin to me based on his last name. But the November election is approaching very quickly. And on my podcast, I like to take time out from my regular shows and get a chance to talk to the candidates, for you to get a chance to know the candidates. And I hope that when you go to the ballot box, some have started voting in some parts of the country already, and people will do early voting soon here. So we hope that you will listen to each of the candidates and listen to what their platform is for this year's election, and judge them not by the political party that they may be associated with, but listen to their vision, their ideas for the office that they seek to hold. Today, my special guest is Andrew Harrison. And like I said, he has a great last name, so he has that going for him. But he is the Republican candidate for the Marion County Clerk's office. And it is such a pleasure to have him here with me today. And we're going to spend some time talking about, you may want to know, well, what does the Marion County Clerk do? So he's going to talk about that. He's going to talk a little bit about himself, what he does, and why he wants to be the Marion County Clerk for Indianapolis. So, Andrew, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Reverend Harrison. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I would have called you my cousin or something like that, but we might be kin and might not even know that, but it is a pleasure to have you here today. Just take a little bit of time, before we get into some of the more details, to share a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Tell the listeners a little bit about who Andrew is.
Sure thing. I appreciate that. And again, thanks for having me. So, excuse me, who am I? So I'm Andrew Harrison, running for Marion County Clerk. I've lived in Indianapolis about 25 years. I'm a transplant, but...
Where are you from?
Well, so I'm a military brat, so
okay.
I'm not really from anywhere.
Okay.
I'm from somewhere. I was born in Chicago on a Navy base.
Okay.
My dad did naval intelligence, but he really worked for the National Security Agency. So
okay.
I lived in kind of not your normal bases per se, but I grew up in Miami, Key West. I even lived in Cuba for 3 years.
Wow.
But my whole life, my family's been deep-rooted here in Indiana. My dad's family's from Indiana. My mom's family's from Iowa. So my whole life I've been coming back and forth to Indiana for summer, spring breaks. My parents got divorced, sadly, when I was 14, and I did even go to school here for a while at Prairie Meridian, but graduated in South Florida. And so that's... So when I graduated, I lived on the West Coast for a while and then I came back to Indianapolis and called it home. So for what have I been? Who am I? So I'm a global security business leader. So what I do every day is global business resilience for a Fortune 100 company. So what does that really equate to? So global business resilience is really a new term in the private sector in the global security space for really a post-COVID era. So when COVID happened, we had, at least for my company, I work for a Fortune 190 right now. We have 300,000 employees. We had to send all those employees home, excuse me, and they still had to work and we still had to be profitable. But regardless, we're still responsible for their safety, and we're still responsible for their security, and we're still responsible for, our brand and our reputation, and things still do happen. Crises happen, events happen, and so we have to still respond accordingly. So that global business resilience really went from global security to global business resilience. That's kind of how that happened. So, but what does that really equate to, unpacking that? So really, what has my life been spent doing is physical security, so designing new facilities, from commercial high-rises to huge distribution centers, putting in all the security controls, really the standards, the people, the processes, the technology that go with that. Executive security, making sure that our executives have security, especially if they travel to high-risk destinations. Excuse me. Travel security. So we have same thing we do for our associates, we do for our executives. We don't do necessarily the executive component, but for all the companies that I work for, if we have employees that travel to high-risk locations, we put together kind of a custom, travel security package for them to make sure that they're safe and secure wherever they may be going.
So when you talk about a high-risk location, is that traveling out of the country? Is it also here in the United States in an area that may be high risk for them because of who they are?
Yeah, a little bit of both of that. It's mostly international travel, but to the second part of what you just stated, yeah, we have a lot of expats from other countries that live here, and vice versa. We have a lot of former U.S. citizens live in other countries, but those folks, like, for example, I'll use India. We have 150,000 associates from India. When they come here to the United States to work on visas and whatnot, if they're going to live in Los Angeles, they may not know anything about Los Angeles, and maybe they've never been in the United States. So we have to put together kind of a travel briefing for them. And it could be that they're going to live here, or it could be they're here for just a short visit. So we got to make sure they understand the culture and, the do's and don'ts, the very basic types of things. So they're not, I don't want to say identified or targeted, if you will, but just make sure that they're safe when they're here to travel or here to live. So on top of the physical security, executive security, travel security, I also do crisis management. Okay. So on any given day, there could be a crisis going on. To give you an example of last week, everything from typhoons in Asia to hurricanes in Florida to the energy crisis in Europe to you name it, whatever's really going on in today's day and age, I deal with that on a global scale. Again, my job is to make sure our employees are safe first, and then make sure our business interests are safe. So that's the crisis management aspect of it. So I kind of touch, and I do some cybersecurity as well. So I touch all the security spokes on the wheel. Not all on one given day. That's a really bad day if I have to touch all those spokes. But those things do happen sometimes. And I have a team. So I'm segueing into what I do now. So I have a team right now of 7 people that work directly for me all over the country, from Canada to U.S. to Mexico to the Philippines to Australia. Got folks all over. And then I have hundreds of contractors. I probably have over 300 contractors, being security guard, executive security specialists, so on and so forth, that work for me. So my job is to be a people manager, to manage a budget, and to make sure that we are advancing our safety and security initiatives for our organization. And again, the goal is to make sure our folks stay safe, we stay secure, and my job is to find vulnerabilities, seek them out, plug them up, shore them up, make sure that that we stay as secure as we can be at any given time.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison, and today my guest is Andrew Harrison, who is running for the Marion County Clerk's office, and he's telling us a little bit about himself. When the kind of work that you do, what led you into politics?
So that's a great question. I appreciate that. So I've been involved in politics in the background for a long time. Okay. So probably since the early 2000s, serving on a number of different boards and committees. In the private sector, I've served on boards, and I won't bore you with that here today, but I've wrote standards for the supply chain and whatnot. But in the public sector, I've lived in the South Side. That's where I call home. And I've served on the City of Southport Public Safety Board. So that's the equivalent of the IMPD kind of merit board. Right. So I served there. That was a really tough board to serve on. It kind of happened by accident. I saw something happening in Southport, and I took action and reported it, and that led me to a conversation with the mayor. And next thing I knew, I was getting sworn in to be on the public safety board because of those best practices that I have from the private sector. Right. That mayor said, well, maybe you can help us out over here in Southport. So I said, yeah, absolutely. I live here, of course. Why wouldn't I? that turned into, from Public Safety Board into the Parks Board, which was one of the toughest boards, believe it or not, I've ever served on in my life.
Wow, wow.
People care about some parks, and they care about some greenery, and they care about those places being safe and beautiful. And I've never had, out of any job I've ever had in my life, being on that Parks Board is probably the most demanding job I've ever had because I've never seen a community care so much about something. At least, again, that's Southport, that time frame. Which was just mind-boggling to me, and I gave me a brand new appreciation of parks.
Right, right.
So I did that, and then I had the opportunity to represent Southport's one of 4 or 5 locations that were not part of Unigov back in the 60s, or I think 70s, and Southport, Lawrence, Beach Grove Speedway, and I think there's one other. So they decided to be their own city. They still have IMPD, and they still have all those resources, on top of their own resources, but Southport has to have a seat at the table on county affairs. So my first kind of, opportunity to get involved in the county was to serve on, I'm going to say it 5 times, it's really tough, to serve on the Marion County Multi-Hazard Mitigation Planning Committee.
Wow,
That's
wow.
a big one.
That's a big, it is.
What is that? So that's really a FEMA board.
Okay.
So, FEMA, everybody knows what FEMA is. It's federal. And there's millions of dollars that FEMA has.
Right.
But you have to go out and ask for it. You have to go out and have a grant writer write grants, and you have to be able to put together a business case and say, hey, Southport, we need some of that FEMA money too. We have flood problems, we have this, we have that. And so I was able to represent Southport, serve on that Marion County Multi-Hazard Mitigation Planning Committee board, and serve there. And that really gave me my door opening to Marion County, kind of to what it's all about, to sit at a table with representation from not only just Marion County, but all these other Unigov cities. And it was quite the learning experience. That really led me to want to serve more. I live here. I love this community. It's not just the South Side that I love this entire community. And for me, serving in the background has been great, and it's been fun. But, given the current state of the city as I see it today, I don't feel that I can sit on the sidelines knowing what I have to offer, especially for this specific role. For me not to offer my services, I think would be a disservice. So that's why I'm running. And I'd love to tell you more about the clerk's office and how that kind of ties into what I do, and if you'd like to go there now.
Well, yes, this is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison, and my special guest is Andrew Harrison, who is running for the Marion County Clerk's office. Let's go there and begin to talk a little bit about that, because I'm not for sure most people even know what the Marion County Clerk does, and in this election, probably the race that most people are paying attention to probably is the prosecutor's race. So tell us a little bit about the Marion County Clerk's office, what that office does, and then from your perspective, what would you bring to the office? A lot of the people who listen to this show, I would say, are moderate Democrats, conservative, that listen to the show, and some progressives do. So you get this opportunity to kind of speak to everyone. Why vote for Andrew Harrison for this position, particularly if you are a Democrat? What would you bring to the table that Kay Sweeney Bell would not?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. That's like a 4 or 5 parter. Let me start from the beginning. So what is a clerk? What is the clerk's office? So to be honest, I didn't know what a clerk's office was. When I was looking to run this midterm, I was looking at all the different seats that were available.
Okay.
And I think there's 2 going unchallenged in the county, and lucky for them. But when I was looking at all of them, some you needed a law degree, some you needed a certification, blah, blah, blah. When I saw this clerk office role, what really struck a chord with me was the election security component, and I'll come back to that just in a second. But I really didn't know what a clerk was. Reading a job description is one thing, but what really is the clerk's office? I've been there. I think everybody's been there for something. They handle life events. You can consider it the gateway to county government. I'm sure everybody's used that tag phrase. And it is all of those things, but it's a lot more than that.
Okay.
It's a very, very important office, and I do a lot of research, and I spent a lot of time this midterm campaign season in other counties. I spent time in just to have some kind of comparative analysis from smaller size to larger size or comparative size cities and counties. I spent a lot of time in Knox County and a lot of time in Allen County, so in Vincennes and Fort Wayne, just to kind of get some ideas of how clerk's offices function. And they're very, very different from the southern part of Indiana to the northern part of Indiana, very, very different. And you got Marion County smack dab in the middle. Of course, they're not going to let me in there to kind of peruse around yet, right? I have to go other places.
Right.
So really, it's really three core functions. And this is not all-inclusive. There are many, many more things. But the three core functions are: you are the chief election officer for the county. Okay. And I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. That's a big, big deal, not to be taken lightly. You are the chief custodian of court records. So, you've got thousands and tens of thousands of court records, being stored at that location. And there's actually three properties. There's the new Justice Center, the city county building that we all know downtown. And then there's one on the south side of Indianapolis on Madison Avenue where they actually store those documents. And then, of course, digital documents stored on servers. So being the chief custodian of those records for the courts, making sure those are safeguarded, because that's your personal information, personal data, your personal identifiable information, all that sort of stuff. It's got to be safeguarded. And then the third component is you are the chief financial officer for the court system. So to give you that comparative analysis that I was referencing from Knox County to Allen County. Knox County being Vincennes, a very small county. That's the first city here in Indiana. I didn't know that until I went down there. It's where it all started for Indiana. They bring in maybe $3 to $15 million in monies, and we're talking monies from criminal, from civil, from marriage licenses, from child support, you name it, all those different monies that flow through the clerk of the court's office. And you go to Allen County, which is the second. I don't know if it's the second largest county. I know it's the second largest city. No, Lake County is the second largest county. Second largest city to Indianapolis, Fort Wayne. They bring in about $30 million. So you can only imagine when Indianapolis brings in. My estimate would be 80 to 100 million. Right. So you bring in, all those monies flowing in. Someone has to maintain all those monies and be that chief financial officer. Someone has to maintain and make sure that all the appropriate folks that need to be paid get paid. And someone's got to upkeep the books, and someone's got to set the budget and all those sorts of things. But so for me, getting back to that chief election officer for the county, that's what struck a chord with me the most. And to kind of dovetail on the Kate Sweeney Bell, I've met her once, nice lady. I don't want to sit here and talk about her, obviously, but she's the current recorder, and she was the Democratic Party chair. And thank goodness she resigned before she became the Marion County clerk, if she was going to beat me. The verdict's not out on that yet. So you can't have that. You have to have someone in this office that is bipartisan, that understands that. And so for me... Do
you feel that's missing right now, the bipartisan piece?
I don't want to say that it's completely missing. Okay. I do think there's some definite partisanship taking place in there. Okay. And that's one of the things that I would assess. Right. Because I think you need so what was going to happen? Well, what was potentially going to happen, I should say. I'm not lost yet. It's not over. What was potentially going to happen just happened. Kate giving up her party chair seat. Right. Mila, first African American to become the Democratic Party chair. Congratulations to her. Right. She is the current clerk. So where we were potentially going to go, we're now there. Okay. What does that mean? Well, it depends on who you ask what that means. Okay. Now, there is a Marion County election board, so I'm not going to sit here and make accusations that I can't back up because I've got nothing to back any of those things up. But there's a Marion County election board that is bipartisan. So you have that's kind of sitting in the background, so there's that checks and balances. So even though the clerk of the court is the certifier of the elections, making sure the polls are staffed and polls are and voting locations are open and all those sorts of things, there's that election board that is in the background watching, or supposed to be watching anyway. So one of the things that I would do is I would do a SWOT analysis. If I was elected, I would come in there immediately and I would treat it like a Fortune 100 environment, because it needs to be. I think that Marion County City County building needs to get cleaned up quite a bit, and I can't clean all the offices. I'm only laser focused on the clerk's office. I think great service, and I think that could always be better. I think shoring up security vulnerabilities, and we can touch on some of those that I see. There's a list of those that I see that I would identify, or I have identified that I would shore up pretty quick. But I would do a SWOT analysis, identify the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. What are we really good at? What are some things that we can potentially be great at? What are some things that we're not so great at? And what are some things that kind of threaten this office? And then this doesn't really go right from an acronym perspective, I would say SWOT-P. I would assess the politics in that office. And it doesn't mean that if you're Republican and if I win, all Democrats are fired. It doesn't mean that at all. It's not what I'm saying. There's some great city, county government employees there from across the spectrum that have been there throughout every single administration.
Right.
And where I'm going to need those people, right? But if you can't show me that you can do your job in a bipartisan fashion, I can't have you on my team.
Okay.
And that kind of goes with what I do for a living. I make tough decisions every day. I have to execute them no matter what, if I like them or not. So for comparing that to the clerk's office, I may not like, if I'm elected, the results of that race. Too bad, so sad. You can count on me that I'm going to deliver the truth. Bipartisan.
Right.
There's going to be no partisan in it.
Right.
Sorry that my Republican friend lost.
Right.
Sorry you lost.
Right.
That's it. End of story. Period. That's it. So I would assess the politics in the office, but is there partisanship going on? I don't know. I'm not there. Do I think the opportunity for that is there? Absolutely. Right now you have the current clerk, who is the Marion County Democratic Party chair.
Right.
That is bad from an optics perspective.
Right.
That opens the door wide open for scrutiny, criticism for this midterm election.
Right.
And she's a lame duck clerk right now, right? She's termed out. Now she's going to walk over to auditor unchallenged. Congratulations to her. She's already won. The optics of that are not good, and that should not happen, in my opinion. I'm glad that she is the new Democratic Party chair, and that we're only going to deal with that potential vulnerability for a few months, but it's going to be during this midterm, unfortunately. But good news is that if I were to lose and that my opponent was to win, we wouldn't have to worry about that for 4 years. That just can't happen. I would never try to be the party chair and the chief election officer of the county. That is a partisan role, right? You have to be bipartisan. So you need someone that understands that. You need someone that can still execute those decisions and make sure that people get the truth. And that's one of the big problems that we're facing right now, is that a lot of folks are not trusting the process, and it's because of things like this. The optics of it just don't look right? People, I can't imagine that this whole election cycle that's about to happen here is that someone isn't going to bring up some scrutiny or some shenanigan. Right. Well, the door's been opened up for that.
Well, one of the things that you hear, in the community, and I don't think it's just Marion County, but one of the things you hear, and I know you've been out a lot on, in neighborhoods and talking to residents, but I think the whole issue of easier access for people to vote, and I don't know what your position is on that. More early voting sites. You don't know if economics was the issue, why there's not more opportunities. I think that's part of what you hear, particularly when it comes to Republican candidates, that they're trying to suppress the vote. Have you heard that? How would you answer that or address that if you were to be elected as the Marion County clerk?
I've certainly heard that. I don't see anything that's happening right now where there's potential suppressing of the vote. I think for me, it should be easy to vote and hard to cheat.
Okay.
That's my message.
Right.
I want to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. And so what does that mean? That means that I want more polling locations. I want more voting available sooner. I want that traveling board to be able to come to. I think voting is paramount, right, to our country. And, there are ample amount of opportunities to vote. And I took some notes here on, just to give you an example.
Okay.
There's 186 voting centers in Marion County. That's a lot of locations for Marion County. Can we have more? Sure. Got to staff all those, though, and that's the problem, right? It's the staffing component. Satellite sites, which open up on October 29th. You got Pike, you got St. Luke, you got Lawrence, you got Thatcher Community Park.
So it's October the 29th. Why isn't it not sooner?
You're gonna have to talk to the legislation about that. Legislators, I don't make those rules. Could it be sooner? Yeah.
So the legislators decide when early voting starts.
Well, the Secretary of State runs all this, but it is decided by the legislators.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Would I make that sooner? Yeah, I think it could be sooner. I mean, if we're allowing absentee voting it's occurring right now as we speak.
Right now, right.
Why not have the satellite sites open right now?
Right.
But again, you got to be able to staff those, and that's the challenge.
That's the challenge.
So I think, in my opinion, they should kind of coincide together. Then that would kind of, if they coincided together, then that would kind of take out the absentee ballot. But you got to always have the absentee ballot, because then everybody's going to have the opportunity to actually come physically to a location and vote. So you have to have that, in my opinion. So I don't think that can ever go away. But
so when does the absentee ballots have to be in to? Is that sent downtown or where? So if I fill out absentee ballot, if I was an elderly person, I would mail it back into the clerk's office.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe you would have had to have registered by like the second or third week of September, and I don't think the deadline to have those in is passed yet. I think there's still, I think, another 4 or 5 days before you have to have that mailed in, or at least postmarked. So there's still time to mail those in. But there is a cutoff for that, and that is going to cut off very, very soon.
This is Reverend Charles Harrison with Real Talk, and my special guest today is Andrew Harrison, who is running for the Marion County Clerk's Office. He is the Republican candidate. We are not kin. If some of you who are tuning in now are wondering, we're not kin, but a great guy. One of the other questions that you hear people talk about when it comes to elections is, and I think you kind of touched on it a little bit about, making sure that the voting is secure. And one of the issues is the whole, idea about voter IDs. Where are you at on that when it comes to what people really need when they come to the polls to vote? I think we require in Indiana the driver's license.
You actually don't have to have a driver's license. I mean,
okay.
you do have to have a license, or excuse me, you do have to have a form of ID, but it doesn't have to be a driver's license.
So it doesn't have to be a driver's license?
It can be an Indiana ID card, which is you can get that at no charge to
okay.
the DMV.
Okay.
So do I think you need to have an ID? Absolutely. Absolutely should have an ID. I mean, you have to have an ID to buy a pack of cigarettes, a lottery ticket, alcohol. I was looking at your website the other day for your church event. You had something advertised where you needed to show ID or something.
Yeah.
This is basic stuff. You got to have an ID, right?
However,
the good news is that if you don't have your ID, you can still come and vote on a provisional ballot on Election Day.
Okay.
You can.
Okay.
And they'll give you some time. Basically, you can cast your vote, and you've got a short window. I forget what the time parameter, I think it's 7 to 10 days. You've got a short window to come back and basically bring the credentials that are necessary to validate, your identity, and then your ballot is counted.
So that's after Election Day, 7 to 10 days after election. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's called a provisional ballot.
Provisional ballot.
Meaning you show up to vote, and let's say you've got nothing on you.
Okay.
Say, I'm Andrew Harrison, I'm here to vote.
Okay.
You are registered.
Right.
And maybe you've got a piece of mail or something, but you got nothing else to prove your identity. They're going to go ahead and let you vote.
Okay.
They're not going to count the vote yet.
Right.
You're going to have to come back and prove your identity, right?
Okay.
So there are ample amount of opportunities to vote. And vote again. Do I think you should have ID? Absolutely. I don't see that you can get an ID for free at the BMV.
So what's the controversy about the IDs then? Why are we having such a national controversy about that whole idea of IDs and is preventing people from voting? Is it politically driven? Well, what is your view on that?
I'm not a politician, and
okay, you might become one.
I watch all the different news channels and all the different talking heads and whatnot. But I think some of it's political. I think some states have taken it too far.
Okay,
I don't think we're one of them.
Okay.
Some states, again, I don't want to sit here and talk about things that I'm not an expert on, but I've read some states that, without any form of ID at all, you can't vote, right?
Okay.
And it's just not true for Indiana. You can,
right,
but you still have to show your ID after the fact. But I don't know. To me, it just doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
I think that should be a national thing, in my opinion. And again, I'm speaking about things way out of the clerk's realm here.
Okay.
But I just think an ID is so basic.
Right.
It's free. You don't need much to get one.
Right.
Even if you don't have a residence, you got to have a couple pieces of mail or whatever to show where you live at the BMV. Even if you live in a shelter, they can give you something to prove that you live there. It's so simple to get an ID. I don't really know why people even talk about it. I think it is partially probably a talking point for political reasons.
Right. Okay.
They use that to say, well, they're suppressing the vote because they're requiring an ID. Well, no, I mean, you have to have ID to most things in life. You have to have an ID. I just think it's one of many talking points for depending on what side of the spectrum.
You've been out and about, and I know you've been in a lot of different neighborhoods, along with several of the other candidates. How has people in those neighborhoods, how have they responded to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just last week, I was on 38th Street, kind of in that area. I've been all over. You're right. I've hit all 7 townships, and I've been hitting it hard every single day for the past 6 months. Every day, and I'm counting down these last 34 days. I wish I was losing weight, but I'm gaining weight because I got 10 functions and whatnot. Yeah. So it depends on where you go. What I'm finding, and I think I'm being asked kind of the same questions everywhere I go, but maybe with different. Different, not animosity. That's not the word for it. Different angles that people are coming at me with those same types of questions. When I was on 38th Street walking, did I feel welcome? Yeah, I felt welcome. I feel welcome everywhere here in Indianapolis. Did I get a lot of looks? I mean, sure, I get looks on the South Side. I mean, have I ever felt unsafe anywhere? No, I did have a dog come after me. That's not a good mailman has that happen to him too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but I think that a lot of folks are very much engaging. That do come to so when we knock on doors, some people don't want to come to the door. Some people have no soliciting. We're not soliciting, by the way. We're not selling anything.
Right.
We're selling ourselves, if anything, but we're not selling a product per se. But people that do come to the door, we have a script and a survey that we ask you to take. And a lot of people don't have time for a survey. They just want to kind of hear your 30 seconds and take your palm card and have a nice day, right? And make their own decision. Or they've already have their decision made up. But I've never really had anyone extremely express animosity towards me, like you're not welcome here, get off my property, nothing like that. I've not experienced that. But the 3 things I'm asked the most, which is bizarre, running for Marion County Clerk here, to me, where do you stand on MAGA? And I'm not a MAGA. How do you feel about the January 6th insurrection? Well, how do you think? Of course, I'm not happy with what happened on January 6th. Nobody's happy about that. Again, I'm trying to understand what people are asking me that I'm running for county clerk here. Okay. What does it have to do with county clerk? That part I'm not quite grasping. And then the third question that I'm always asked is, do you think the elections were stolen, the last presidential election? And no, I do not. I think Biden's our president, and that ship has sailed. Do I think there were some shenanigans in some states? Sure. Do I think there are some shenanigans every election season in some states? Yeah, I do. And I'll touch on some of those vulnerabilities that I see here in Marion County, those types of shenanigans that could potentially happen that I think have happened in some states. Do I think it was enough to overturn the election? No, not at all.
Well, part of it is, I think, and I was asking you that question because I think there has been, to some extent, the demonization of Republicans. And here you are running for the Marion County Clerk in a city that is predominantly Democrat. And I was asked then what has been the response, particularly in Democratic areas for your candidacy, with the background of the Donald Trump, with the mega Republicans, with January 6th, which Democrats have done an effective job of making it sound like our democracy was in jeopardy on January 6th. I never felt like it was in jeopardy, but I'm not for sure how many Democrats like myself, feel that way. But it has been a talking point, and I'm not surprised to hear you say those were the 3 things that was asked to you. But do you feel like it's been an uphill battle for you running for the Marion County Clerk in a city that I've heard some numbers as many as 63% of registered voters are Democrat. I don't know if those are exact numbers. So has that been challenging for you?
It has. It has, and I've listened to a lot of your podcasts, and I've listened to a lot of the different candidates you've had on here, and I've listened to some of the Republican candidates here last night, and I'm not going to repeat what they said, but it's going to probably sound similar to what they said, but there is a mistrust. I think there was a significant opportunity here that the Republican Party had in Marion County, and we blew it. Was I around? No.
Okay.
Am I sorry for what happened? Absolutely.
Right.
I still don't know what happened because I wasn't here. Something happened. I don't know if it was racially driven. I don't know. I don't know enough about what happened, but there's a significant mistrust, and I can't really put my arms around what it is and why we can't move forward and get past it.
So you're hearing it was in Marion County, or is it national? I thought Mayor Ballard was very effective as a Republican mayor in a predominantly Democratic city. And part of it was he never came across as a Republican. You know, most people saw him as an independent who probably was running as a Republican. And some of the stuff that he supported, a lot of people felt like wasn't your traditional Republican kind of positions. And I think that's why he was so effective. He may have won a third term if he had ran. He was just that popular with independents and I think moderate Democrats.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't hear a lot of those national things when I'm out walking about, other than those three questions. And Mayor Ballard did win, and it shows that Republicans can win here in Marion County.
Right.
Mitch Daniels won in the state. And,
right.
And it's not impossible. I think folks. I just think that we need to be able to get our message out, and we are the party of people. We believe in people. We believe in empowering people.
Right.
We believe in inclusiveness. We believe in all these things, and I think the Democrats have done such a great job with their messaging that we're not any of those things.
Right.
It's hard to get over that because
yeah.
what they're saying, we're not any of those things.
Right.
We're a complete opposite of that. Complete opposite of that. And I'm pretty moderate. I am not your uber right extreme guy. Like I told you, I'm pretty moderate. I'm kind of in the middle on a lot of things. There's a few things I'm on the right on.
Right.
A few things I'm on the left on, but I'm proud to say I'm in the middle as well. But what do I identify the most with? The Republican Party. I do. So I hope that answers your question on.
Yes, I'm just kind of tossing it out there and letting you talk. You talked about what you see as some security issues when it comes to voting. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Absolutely. So I'll give you a few examples.
Okay.
So some of these are going to be Secretary of State related things that I'm running for clerk. I have no control over that. So for example, in some of my explorations in other counties, I've gave my ID at the voter at the city county building just to check my voter registration.
Right.
Just kind of doing some fact finding.
Right.
And I found that I was in the system 7 times, and Marion County entered me 7 times. Now that's not a Secretary of State per se issue. I mean, they do maintain a statewide voter registration system that is Secretary of State, but that goes into like the voter rolls, right? Nobody's really maintaining those. Now, are those 7 Andrew Harrisons all real? No, they're not. Are there 7 Andrew Harrisons voting? No, because I even asked, show me the history of the voting for those 7. Because what was surprising, Reverend Harrison, is that like 3 of those were at my actual address. How's that possible?
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
And I haven't moved in a long time.
Right,
it's just an error. And you can see what county entered those in. It was
right,
Marion County.
right,
It was just an error, I'm
right.
sure. I don't think it was anything malicious. Just an error. But those voting rules need to be maintained. That's a vulnerability. But let's get more specific here to Marion County. This is going to, I hope, really open up the eyes of folks that maybe don't know about this, but it is an eye-opener to me. There's something called the Traveling Election Board. So I'm going to be crystal clear on this. I believe in the Traveling Election Board. I believe in its purpose. Just like I believe in absentee ballots. Folks that are disabled, sick, military, religious, whatever, they can't get there to go vote. They have to have a means to vote. I firmly believe in that. Same with the traveling board. You're not able to get to a voting location, one of those 186 locations, or you can't vote by absentee mail for whatever reason. Marion County's going to bring the vote to you. I support that. I think that's a great thing that we're doing. However, that thing is as loose as a goose. I kid you not. they are using taxi cabs to transport a team of two, an R and a D, to location A, B, C, D, E, throughout a course of a day to make many, many stops via city taxi, all taxpayer funded. And they go inside, and I've talked to some of these traveling board members, R and D. So I verified how this kind of works here, and I've heard it pretty much match up. So this is pretty accurate here. They go inside a location. Let's say it's a retirement home, right? We're bringing the vote to them. That's a great thing that we're doing. Everybody deserves a chance to vote, an opportunity to vote. So do the R&D stay together where they're inside that location? Sometimes they don't. Well, what happens if they split up? One goes over here to talk to you, one goes over here to talk to me. Well, what if the one talking to me has questions about the candidates? And what if I want to educate that individual on those candidates? Like, don't vote for this person or that person, vote for that person. Nobody's watching. Nobody's watching. So, okay, there's that. What concerns me even more is that you would think after that transaction, that vote is done, they go straight back to the city county building. That ballot is so precious, right? Straight back to the city county building. Okay, it's still a taxi, which that needs to be fixed too. Should be a Brinks armored truck or sheriff. You should be,
right?
Or sheriff deputy at least. You think it goes straight back to the city county building and be locked up in a vault, right? No. It goes to the next location. And now where does the ballots go? Well, they're in these bags, and the bags have a lock, but this is not some $5,000 locker. You can clip it with a bolt cutter.
Right.
It sits in the back of the taxi cab, and they go on to the next location, and the next location, and the next. So in the back of this taxi cab, you got this bag of these ballots just piling up. With this taxi driver, which who knows who the heck he or she is.
Right.
Are they trustworthy? So you got a chain of custody mess, in my opinion. Very, very vulnerable. A lot of opportunity for improvement. Is it working? Yeah, sure. It depends on who you ask.
Right.
We don't know what's happening, but we know that the traveling board is happening. You can request that, and they'll come out to you. They will. So that's one vulnerability that needs to be shored up for sure. But there are just a number of vulnerabilities that need to be addressed there. And again, that's what I'm about. My whole life has been spent identifying vulnerabilities and finding ways to address them. And sometimes they're quick, they're fast. Sometimes they take a lot of money, and they're larger strategic type initiatives that are going to take a lot of funding. But there's a lot of loose, easy, quick things that I think that could be addressed, like that taxi traveling board matter. That's an easy fix, in my opinion. Not allowing the chief election officer of the county to be the party chair. That should never happen. It just opens the door wide open for scrutiny and criticism. Having the voter rolls maintained properly, not having Andrew Harrison's name in there 7 times.
Right.
These are just basic things that don't take a whole lot to fix. How come they're not being addressed? I mean, the election board being the party chair and being the chief election officer of the county, that's a little bit different. But the election board and the voting rolls, those are easy things to fix. And you have, I think, more than enough resources to allocate to that, in my opinion. I don't know anybody who's not doing it.
Our time has gone by so fast. This has been a fascinating conversation. Andrew, I want to thank you so much for joining me today on Real Talk with Reverend Harrison. I'm Reverend Charles Harrison, and this has been Real Talk. Join me next time as I bring more real talk about the real issues that affect our communities here in Indianapolis and across the country. Make sure on this November you get out to vote and be open-minded as to who you will vote for. Don't just vote based on your political party. Get to know the candidates and their platform. Listen to them, and then cast your vote based on what you hear. Also, be sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast and share it on Facebook and Twitter. This is Reverend Charles Harrison. Thank you so much for joining this podcast today, and I pray that you have a blessed and wonderful day.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.